What exactly are crypto market cycles? How have the last crypto market cycles been similar or different? And what were some of the key and trending themes that we saw in past crypto market cycles? Welcome back to Crypto Code by ICN Today. In today's video, I attempt to answer these questions as we go back in time and look at all the market cycles that have happened in crypto. When I was preparing for this video, I was taken back to 2017 when I first got into crypto. I found myself laughing, and at times I almost cried just remembering the journey. I thought it would be great to go back and reevaluate what has happened during this time. I broke this video down into 5 chapters. I was thinking about the ICO days, from the white papers to new tokens being listed on exchanges. And as I started to pull up the charts to see where we're at and where we are today, it's insane. It went from just Bitcoin, and then we had Ethereum. And after that, we saw DeFi, NFTs, gaming, DeFi 2.0, AI, RWA, and now we have millions of projects that have launched tokens. To see the insane growth, let's pull up a chart I found. So if we look at the chart and we pull up and look at when I first got into crypto in 2017, I think around the first quarter, we're looking at a valuation of market cap of the entire industry at $50 billion. Today, it's at $2.2 trillion. And if we look at the breakdown, you see that Bitcoin obviously has the lion's share at 1.26 trillion and has grown by 84,000% since the beginning, whereas all of the altcoins have grown by like 520,000%, which is just insane. So we went from a market cap of $50 billion in 2017 to $2.2 trillion today. That's a 3,900% growth in just 7 years. But aside from just numbers, looking back, I remember it was such a roller coaster of emotions, from the highs to the devastating lows. How we survived this is beyond me. What I can at least confirm is that there's been some fascinating developments in technology during this time. This felt like fintech and fundraising, but on steroids, where projects were raising hundreds of millions of dollars, even billions of dollars, without anyone's permission. Until the SEC got involved, of course. So in today's video, I'm going to break down the major cycles that I've personally been through since 2017. I want to look at some of the key trends, the themes, and some of the major headlines that were across the news at that time. Chapter 1, the ICO boom, 2017 to early 2018. Let's start when it all began for me, 2017. Bitcoin was dominating the scene, but Ethereum was just starting to get a lot of traction and momentum in the market. We didn't know it yet, but this was setting the stage for the ICO boom, where everyone and their dog had a white paper and an idea where they wanted to build something incredible for the ecosystem. It was pure madness. So I was living in Shanghai at the time, and I remembered I had a colleague of mine who was bragging about Ethereum. He apparently had invested in it in 2014 at the ICO stage at 30 cents. And by the time 2017 rolled around, I remember the price was around $9 when he was telling me about this. And I was like, how did I miss this? What is an ICO? And that's when I really went down the rabbit hole of trying to figure out what it is. By January 2017, ETH's price was around $9. Then I remember by April 2017, it hit $50. Can you imagine? And then by December 31, 2017, the price of Ethereum, I remember, was $756. That is insane. But in July, when I saw ETH's price at $50 and I saw my colleague laughing and being so happy with his investment because he got in at 30 cents, remember? I was like, how did I miss out on this ICO? How did I not know about what's going on? And so I really wanted to figure this out. And I was like, why is no one talking about this? So that's what I did. I went down the rabbit hole and I started to understand exactly what ICOs were. I saw new projects being launched every week and I figured something really interesting out. I was really early. And before X, it was Twitter, and that was the place to be. And you would find all these new founders popping up, talking about amazing technology that they were building. But the issue back then was no one was doxxed. I think a lot of these American founders just didn't want any of that coming back to them, right? Because as an American, you're not allowed to kind of raise securities. At the time, a lot of these projects were being built on Ethereum because it was the number one, layer one at the time. I remember some of the gas fees at that time were going to like $100, $150 even. Also in 2017, Binance was launched. And that was the first time we saw a centralized exchange really gain popularity and momentum. So my first ride was with Bitcoin. When I got into it in 2017, I was looking back at it, the price was around $900 in the beginning of that year. And then towards March is when I got into it. It was around $1,200. So I got in full conviction just on Bitcoin. And I held. And I went through that ride all the way to December when it hit $20,000. Insane. I remember thinking I just made 20x on one investment in less than a year. I have never gotten a return like that on any other investment before. But obviously, as a self-proclaimed degen, I did decide to dabble here and there. Very small, not a huge portfolio in some of the ICOs. I maybe made 2 great investments, or I like to call them bets at that time. And then I've also like completely crashed on a few of those as well. I was basically just trying to find the next Ethereum. But at that time, it was so difficult because there was only white papers with no like images. You just had to kind of read through it. and trying to figure out which project had that huge potential that Ethereum did. But lessons learned, and I'm glad that the industry has improved and matured. Another trending theme at that time was USDT, and actually USDT was launched on Ethereum in 2017. This obviously gave it huge popularity and helped it grow much faster than before. I was living in Shanghai at the time, and living in China as an expat is quite hard because they've banned everything. They've banned Google, Facebook, Instagram. Like, this was the only thing that I was lucky to have where I could invest in crypto and be active with these ICOs. But then in September 2017, obviously China decided to ban ICOs, and I was just pissed. But don't worry, I had a VPN. I guess China realized that a lot of scammers were taking advantage of people, and so they wanted to put an end to it. And this is when I learned what a rug pull is. But all in all, it was a fantastic experience. Bitcoin hit $20,000 by the end of the year, and I got to see a huge return on my investment. But little did we know that the next cycle was just around the corner. And this takes us to chapter 2, the cycle bottom and the beginning of crypto winter. Actually, the next cycle was called the long crypto winter because it lasted from 2018 until mid 2020. So after the ICO craze, the hype died, a lot of projects vanished, and Bitcoin's price went down by 80%. But during this time, something incredible was happening in the background. You had real founders building fantastic and innovative technology. But during this time, Binance became the #1 centralized exchange by far. It became a great place for new projects to list because they had massive liquidity and a huge user base, but they also became a launch pad and had so many new features that they were also introducing. It was really great. But governments were now also taking crypto very seriously, especially with ICOs. In 2019, Ton had their ICO completely removed and they were sued by the SEC. We talk about that in a video that you can also check out on ICN today. And as I mentioned earlier, Ethereum became so popular that a lot of these projects that had a huge following and hype, they congested the network. And you had gas fees at times at $150, which was just insane and didn't make any sense. So during this cycle is when layer 2 started to pop up, and they're really building fascinating technology to scale on top of Ethereum. And that's when we were introduced to Polygon. It used to be called Matic, but it's now today called Polygon. Also, Ethereum used to be proof of work. And at this time and during this cycle, they decided to start looking at becoming proof of stake. Institutions were getting interested. Coinbase and Gemini were starting to offer institutional custodial services as well. But as institutional interest rose, Bitcoin ETFs were still getting rejected at that time. I remember actually thinking that it would never get approved. Also during this time, we saw some crazy stories with like Quadriga CX, which was a centralized exchange in Canada, where the founder literally took all the keys, the private keys, and took it to their grave. Like, what a crazy story. And a lot of people were just really pissed off that something like this could happen. Obviously, every time this happened in our industry, they would just bash it and make it, crypto is a fraud, crypto is a scam. And it was just, every time we saw something like that, it was just hurtful. And all my, friends and family who were not into it would be like, see, we told you should be always be careful. This is when I remember learning, if it's not your keys, it's not your crypto. And that's when I started understanding more about MetaMask and other solutions to kind of keep my Bitcoin and my crypto safe. Crypto was not user-friendly at that time. Even today, it's starting to get a little bit better, but back then it was really hard. And you had to really understand and figure out how to put in a bunch of numbers and letters in a way that made sense and make sure that it was safe and you were actually sending something to the right person. But I guess we all saw the potential of digital ownership. Being able to prove you had something digital that had a lot of value was just very cool. So it was a long crypto winter for sure. We saw Bitcoin go from $20,000 in early 2018 down to $4,000 by mid-2020. Who would have thought that the next bull run would coincide with a global pandemic? This brings us to chapter 3. DeFi summer from 2020 to 2021. DeFi was a game changer. It gave us the tools to trade, lend, and earn yield in a fully decentralized and permissionless way. This wasn't just about speculating anymore. It was about rethinking traditional finance. Little did we know back then that we were redefining the way traditional capital markets work. Uniswap was developed and introduced by Hayden Adams, who got the inspiration from Ethereum co-founder Vitalik's idea on automated market makers, or AMMs. The technology behind AMMs is revolutionary because now, for the first time, we had liquidity staking, we had liquidity for public good, and 24/7 global access. So let's recap. The first cycle, we saw Bitcoin explode by 20x. Everyone and their mothers was talking about Bitcoin. The hype was real, but so were the profits. We then saw a crash in 2018 during the next cycle where Bitcoin lost 80% of its value. But some people were building incredible tech. So now it's 2020. There's a global pandemic where the world has completely stopped, but somehow DeFi has taken the world by storm and the hype was back. Liquidity pools, staking pools, borrowing, lending, everyone could become a stakeholder in these projects. It was redefining the way we did finance. Although we did see some NFT projects in 2017, such as CryptoKitties and CryptoPunks, it wasn't really until DeFi summer of 2020 to 2021 where we saw real explosive growth in the NFT market. During this time, we saw Axie Infinity, we saw the Sandbox, we saw Decentraland, the Bored Ape Yacht Club. They all took over the scene. I personally wasn't into NFTs, but I was watching from the sides. I was just fascinated by it. While most of us were at home thinking the world was about to end, Bitcoin went from $4,000 in the beginning of the year to $29,000 by December. That's an additional 4x in 1 year. And then in 2021, we saw another bull run. Bitcoin went from $29,000 to $60,000 by the end of the year. I really wasn't into altcoins before this, but then I couldn't help but notice some of the incredible returns that were happening. I remember seeing the Sandbox. Like, the price was 5 cents in January 2021. It hit 30 cents by June 2021. Before it hit the all-time high in November 2021 of $8.40. That's 168x. Like what does that even mean? Obviously, you had to be really lucky. You could have been part of the early team, or you could have gotten in at the right time and sold at the right time, because if you did, you'd be laughing. But the crazy thing is, it was accessible to anyone. You could reach out, become part of a new project. They would give you tokens as part of the early team. And if it really went well, you could see in this 168x or 200x. It was possible because we were seeing it live happening. So wow, what a time to be alive if you're investing in 2020 and 2021. We saw some incredible things. We saw Uniswap surpass Coinbase in trading volume in September 2020. We saw DeFi protocols hit $100 billion in total value locked in 2021. We saw El Salvador adopt Bitcoin as a legal tender. We saw Coinbase launch its IPO in New York, and we saw Bitcoin hit an all-time high of $64,000. But stay with me, which brings us to chapter 4, the rise of centralization from 2021 to 2022. As the market soared, we expected a correction to happen, and that's exactly what happened. But on top of that, we started to see major companies in the space just crash and fall, and even some scams. So I call this chapter the chapter of collapses. So as stablecoins became mainstream with USDT, we started to see this thing called algorithmic stablecoins. And there was one major player called Luna, and they had their stablecoin, or algorithmic stablecoin, called UST. Before its collapse in May 2022, Luna reached a valuation of $40 billion, while UST was at $18 billion. The founder, Do Kwon, was so arrogant, he would get on Twitter and just call people poor or stupid. He was a big fraudster, and they ended up arresting him in 2023 in Montenegro. Obviously, something like this had a huge impact in our industry, where $40 billion was just wiped out, but it didn't really hit until we saw what FTX did. To show you just how bad this chapter was for our industry, I decided to pull up some of the headlines during this time. Number 1, Terra Luna's collapse, May 2022, wipes out $40 billion in market value. Number 2, FTX's bankruptcy. Sam Bankman-Fried's empire crumbles, leaving customers in limbo. Number 3, Three Arrows Capital defaults, sending ripples through the crypto lending world. Number 4, the Ronin network hack, one of the largest DeFi hacks ever. That was a $625 million hack done apparently by the North Koreans. Number 5, Celsius and Voyager bankrupt, leading to a loss of billions of customer funds. Number 6, the arrest of SBF following the FTX scandal. As you can imagine, that was just devastating for our industry. Everyone was talking about how crypto is a scam, you should be careful with your money, and we knew what was coming. Regulations. But it wasn't all doom and gloom. We did have some positive news as well. Number 1, Ethereum's successful merge to proof of stake. Some people were worried that it wasn't going to go through properly, but it ended up being fine. It felt like Y2K. Number 2, Bitcoin's ETF actually got approved in Canada. And number 3, rising institutional interest in Bitcoin, with companies like MicroStrategy and Tesla adding Bitcoin to their balance sheets. And I think this is a good segue to our final chapter. Chapter 5, building for the future. 2023 until now, which brings us to today. The market is recovering, and we're seeing some amazing innovations being built. Despite the setbacks, crypto is here, and it's evolving stronger than ever. So, what is happening? First and foremost, we're seeing regulatory clarity across different markets. We're seeing MiCA in Europe. We're seeing VARA here in the UAE as well. The US is getting closer to setting their own regulations. Also during this time, we saw Bitcoin and Ethereum ETFs be approved in the US, which is a massive deal, and why we're seeing Bitcoin really dominate now in the market. On top of that, we're seeing almost every major financial institution adopting DeFi in some sort of way. Solana also launched its own mobile phone. BlackRock is openly talking about how amazing Bitcoin is and how they want to tokenize a lot of their real-world assets on-chain. Tokenizing real-world assets has a huge potential and opportunity, as it's a real use case. I'm personally very bullish on RWAs, and I want to do a whole series around some of the amazing projects that are being built in that space. Of course, AI is another major topic that everyone's talking about, and the intersection between AI and Web3 is showing amazing potential, especially the projects that we're seeing being built. I'm going to do a video next on AI, so make sure you subscribe and like and hit the notification button so you hear it, so you watch it. I think the final theme that we're seeing in this chapter is CBDCs, which are central bank digital currencies. We already live in a cashless society, so I feel like this is just another way that we're going to push towards a digital cash and digital monetary providers. But the biggest thing is like we've built this industry to be decentralized, and CBDCs in their nature are centralized. You don't get more centralized than CBDCs. I think there's no way we can stop it, and we're just going to have to learn how to live with it. It's been a crazy ride from the early ICO days to DeFi summer to the incredible highs to the crashing lows, but we're not done yet. Crypto has always been a lot more than just the price. And what's exciting to see is that we're still early. It's about innovation, disruption, and the potential for a new financial future. If you've been here since the beginning, you know how far we've come. And if you're new, welcome to the journey. Trust me, it's worth it. So what I'm excited about is we've seen over the last 6 years, a lot of these builders build without any regulations or without any oversight. Right now, what's happening is with regulations coming, which I think are going to be very positive for the industry, you're going to see a growth in a lot of these projects, especially with institutional investors being more excited to join and participate in crypto. Right now, we have a very small percentage of institutions who are investing in the space. But once you see the likes of BlackRock and other major institutions like JP Morgan and the like really coming into the space, you're going to see a massive growth in development, as well as exciting innovations that are really coming very, very soon. So please do stay with us. We're just at the beginning stage of it. I want you to be part of this journey, and I want you to see the incredible growth that's going to happen from now onwards. What's also exciting to see with every cycle was the new themes and trends and key innovations that were happening. So if we look back at the first one, it was Ethereum, which just showed us that smart contracts were a possibility, which then introduced NFTs, which then introduced DeFi, and then DeFi went on to the next level when DeFi 2.0, gaming, and how gaming is becoming. And remember, a lot of these games were being built in 2017, 2018, and games take a long time to build. So those are just going to start coming out now. And once publishers and developers see the potential of games on chain, you're going to see a lot more projects understand the potential and opportunity and build on top of that. And now we're looking at new trends in the current cycle that we're in. We're seeing AI, we're seeing RWA. I believe robotics is next. So there's a lot of really fascinating things happening. Please do stay tuned and follow us because we're going to be covering all of it. Thanks for watching. You know what to do. Follow us on ICN Web3 Media across all our socials, and make sure you check out ICN.live, our flagship ecosystem product, where we'll talk about all the latest news, announcements, events that are happening, and all these amazing industries that we're talking about today. Be sure you smash the like and notifications button. We love your support.